afternoon. I'm Dom Van and welcome to my vlog. And hello from a sunny beach in Spain. And for my vlog today, I want to briefly talk about why I live in a van, how I came to make that decision, how I chose my van, and where I am currently from a mindset perspective, having lived on my van for over a year and a half. And for those of you that follow us, you'll know that there's 7 on our van. We've got a long wheelbase Sprinter, which is a 2013 ex-DHL courier van, and I live on the van with my wife Missy, my daughter Rosie, my 2 dogs Juan and Hoagie, and my 2 cats Leo and Morph. So it's a lot of bodies in a very small space. So how did we get into van life? For me, it was a lifestyle choice and something that I stumbled upon by accident. And if I look back now, it all seems very grey. In short, what happened is Missy and I were talking about bucket lists around my birthday. And some of you may know I'm in my 50s, I'm 53, so I'm not a young chicken anymore. But over the course of the last 20 years, we've been gradually becoming more radical in our outlook. We've been not taking everything as verse, and we've been questioning the status quo and the state of the economy, the government, lifestyle choices and so on. We went very quickly from not really knowing anything about van life. If I'm entirely honest, I'd not even heard of it. I didn't know what it was, and like many people, we came across it through the romanticised sort of Instagram posts of people travelling around the world, wherever they might be going or heading. We discussed it and said, oh, maybe we could live on a van. And at the time, we'd never been on holiday in a motorhome. We didn't know anybody that lived in a van. It was all completely alien to us. We lived in a 3-bedroom house in an average sort of town in the Chilterns. 3-bedroom semi. It was very nice, in a quiet little road. So we didn't really have much to complain about. We had a nice roof over our head, a small garden. The house was quite a nice size. So Missy discovered van life on Instagram, and we looked into it. And originally I had a bucket list, and on my bucket list, for some reason, I decided that when I retire, I thought it'd be kind of cool to travel around the world in a motorhome. I never thought of ever doing it before that point in time, but when we talked about it and we looked into van life, we realised that there were thousands of people buying vans, travelling around the world. Some had been doing it for many, many years, so we decided maybe we could do that. So we started off trying to investigate it like you do with any change in your life or work, and do research. So we watched many YouTube videos of all different styles, from people that were obviously showing the romanticised side of life travelling on the road, but we looked at all kinds of different people. And we basically just thought that sounds great. So we decided that we would think about it for a number of months and kind of cautiously approach it, and then make a decision at the end of the 2 months as to whether we were going to live in a van. We obviously had things to look at, like could we afford it? What sort of van would we buy? I'd never ever even driven a van in my life before, let alone stayed in a van or really understood what you could or couldn't do in a van. So we just watched hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos to get an idea of what the lifestyle might be like, and how other people were travelling and what kind of travelling they were doing, whether they were living in the UK, with the pros and cons that has with it, or whether they were in Europe and so on. So we followed all the big YouTubers. We also made sure that we checked other people, perhaps more real life YouTubers, to get an idea of what it might feel like to live in a van. and then we discussed it at great depth as a family with Rosie and Phoenix to see what they thought. And we set ourselves a date and we booked a little camping holiday, I guess in the kind of strange notion that camping in a tent might be similar to living on the road, which of course it isn't. And then we sat around a campfire on this holiday and we sort of all agreed that we'd give it a go, with the worst case that if we didn't like it, then I guess we could always move back into a house at a later date. So we very quickly came to that decision and we kind of wrote lists of what we had to do. We obviously needed to discuss this with family and close friends and get their input, see what they thought, see whether they embraced it or whether they were negative or how they felt about it. And we had to consider we were vast hoarders of stuff, so we then obviously came to the realisation that we would need to give notice to our landlord on our rented house, which we've been in for quite a few years and been very happy in. And then also came the very big realisation that we had a great deal of stuff that we needed to get rid of, and that we'd also need to buy a van to live in. So at the time, having never driven a van before, I wanted the largest van that I thought I could drive that could get me to some remoter places perhaps. And we came upon getting a Sprinter, which is a long wheelbase high top. And I then started to research vans. I did look at all makes of vans and sort of weighed up the pros and cons. Can you stand up? What were they like for? How many miles would they do before they reach the end of their natural life as a generalisation, and so on. I also looked at the pros and cons of buying a van from either a dealer or privately, and whilst the benefit of buying privately meant that you quite often got a cheaper van, certainly you didn't often have to pay the VAT, which pumped the price up, but that you had very little rights or comeback once you'd walked away or driven away in your van. So we decided that due to the protection offered in the UK by buying from a dealer, that we would pay a bit extra and buy a van from a dealer, so that we were hopefully had some measure of protection if there was any issues down the line with the van. And as it happened, that turned out to be a wise decision, because although we got a really nice yellow Sprinter in good condition with very, very little rust, also had very low mileage for its age. So when we bought it, it was 5 years old and it had 75,000 miles on the clock, and it looked like it had been fairly well looked after. Although we obviously had concerns about being a DHL van, how long it had been idling on deliveries as a courier van and so on. But as I said, the decision was wise, because we bought the van, and as we started work on it, we realised that it did have a few problems. It had a big oil leak, which we had to then send it back to the garage, and they took a couple of weeks, and they had to do a lot of work on the engine and replace the sump, which had a crack in it. And then we spent several weeks ripping out all the DHL security inside and hydraulic shelving and so on that was in there. And when we got down to the bare floor, we found that there was a small hole in the floor which had actually been pierced through the skin of the van, and it had actually damaged the main frame of the van. So we then had to send it back to the garage again for some welding. And then we got it checked out independently and put it in for an MOT, and it was all fine. So we then cracked on with our build. So we took around 8 months to complete our build, and that was not just the build itself, but it was also a journey psychologically of packing up all our stuff and throwing out a lot of stuff from our house, and realising just how much crap we'd hoarded over the years, and stuff that we just didn't need, and also stuff that we bought, I guess, for sort of retail therapy or comfort, things that we collected, that whilst that was all very nice, really didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. So that for me was a massive collection of Lego, to all kinds of stuff, just hordes and hordes of socks, pants, trousers, jumpers, t-shirts, ornaments everywhere, furniture everywhere, all crammed full of stuff. So part of the journey for us was actually purging that from our lives, and actually coming to the realisation that most of the stuff in your life, which is material stuff, is actually completely irrelevant to whether you're happy, successful, enjoying life, or anything along those sorts of lines. So we gave away a lot of our stuff, sold some of it, We put loads in skips and got people to come round and help themselves. We gave books and clothes to charity, and it was just a never-ending task. So we were basically spending some of our day working, some of our day packing, and some of our day doing our van conversion. So it seemed like we had a massive amount of time with 8 months. And that was the date that we had to be out of our property with our landlord. And it just wasn't enough time really, the combination of packing and doing the van. And also neither myself or Missy had many of the skills at the time for building a van, so we had to do lots of research. So for example, we made a decision that I had slightly better woodworking skills than Missy, so it was logical that I took on the woodworking side of the build, so that's the bed and the kitchen cabinets, the walls and so on, and that Missy would take on electrics, which neither of us had any idea about. So she used YouTube tutorials, particularly Greg Virgoe, who's now a great friend of ours, who was extremely helpful. His tutorials are absolutely wonderful and very clear and concise and very easy to follow. We asked questions in the Vanlife community about problems we had with the build. So we would drive to my shop or to my mum's house and do 4 or 5 hours work on the van, get home, pack up 20 boxes of stuff, put some more stuff in the skip, bag stuff up to take down the charity shop, and we just had this kind of hellish 8-month period of just being flat out to get the van ready, which was also, with the sweetener that we were enjoying the van build, it was kind of quite exciting that we had this unknown thing that we were diving into head first without any real experience. So to summarise, we bought the sub, our long wheelbase Sprinter, based on what we felt were the most important things to us, which were, we didn't want a white van preferably, we didn't want a van with really high mileage, we also wanted the newest van that we can afford to try and minimise any issues with rust or bodywork, so that hopefully the van would last us a large amount of time and serve us well for many years to come. We wanted to be able to fit a full-size bed in it and to be able to stand up. We had to take into account that there were 4 people and 4 pets, so we bought the biggest van that I felt comfortable driving at the time when we bought it, and with retrospect or hindsight I would probably be comfortable driving a bigger van now, but we're very pleased with our decision, having been in the van for a year and a half. So why do I live in a van? Why do I live in a van? Freedom. I think freedom really is the number one thing. The ability to be free to travel where you like, not just from beach to beach, but country to country. The wonderful things that you see on the way and the people. But now we've been travelling for a year and a half, I think every day that we're out on the road, I love it even more. And now we're just relaxing and enjoying the lovely view, the beautiful beach, the lovely people that we're parked up with. It's such a wonderful place here because everyone is so friendly. So overall I love van life, I love the freedom.